Okay.
And we're good to go.
Fab. So thanks so much to everyone that has joined this evening. As ever, obviously, it's nice to see some familiar faces, and I think we might possibly have a couple of new people. It'd be great, maybe if you are new to the event, to just drop a message in the chat to introduce yourself. But if you haven't been to an event before, we are QA Beginners Club. So essentially what we're all about is putting on events for individuals who are either kind of new in their career to QA or wanting to break into QA or software testing. And basically just running through the basics to help you get your head around it. And we quite often will have a guest speaker like we do tonight to give you a little bit of an insight into how they got into testing and their career path so far. So I think, have we got the code of conduct? Is that on the next slide, Chris?
There we go.
Perfect. So again, apologies if you've been here before and you've heard this, but just in case anyone is new, here's our code of conduct. So kind of key points are it's a safe space, so feel free to ask any questions. There's no such thing as a stupid question. It's always going to be a free event. When we are in person, we do tend to put kind of food and drinks on as well, but again, that would always be free of cost. Anyone at any level of their career is always welcome. Obviously, we want to be respectful to each other. A little bit of housekeeping. It's just easy if we tend to all put ourselves on mute whenever anyone is talking, or even muting cameras off. Just prevents feedback and helps things run a little bit more smoothly. And if you've got questions, again, if you can put them in the chat box and then we'll kind of field them out. So if you're unhappy with anything that happens tonight, or you feel that it wasn't kind of a safe space or comfortable, please do let myself, Chris, or Ken know, and we'll obviously make sure it doesn't happen again. We haven't had to do this yet, and touch wood we won't, but obviously, you know, we will prevent people coming to future events if they do break these rules. So just something to be aware of. Fabulous. And I believe we are getting started this evening with Chris. So Chris is going to be running through a couple of different types of testing or testing techniques and what they mean. So if you've ever seen them on a job advert or you've been asked questions about different types of testing, hopefully this is really going to help you be a bit more confident with your answers moving forward. So I shall hand over to Chris.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Gabby. So my name is Chris Forsyth. I am the given a new title recently. I am the Agile QA test engineer for Rail Diary. Just recently started that position and absolutely loving it. It's basically my job to implement the best QA manifestos, the Agile manifesto, and all the principles, but also set up the test engineering. So help getting the test environment set up, anything to do with browsers or mobiles, get them set up as well. So yeah, it's going really well. And part of that is also about testing techniques, what we should be doing when testing. So we're going to go through some of the basics, what we'll be going through today. It's going to be going through smoke testing, sanity testing, regression testing, and finally, by my good friend Ken Fulton, explorative testing. Hello. Okay, so smoke testing. What is it? Smoke testing is a software testing technique performed post-software build to verify that the critical functionalities of software are working fine. It is executed before any detailed functionality, such as sanity testing or regression testing, has been executed. The main purpose of smoke testing is to reject a software application with defects so that the QA test team do not have to waste any time testing broken software application. Normally we could maybe put this in a build in a pipeline as well, but once the build has been done, the best thing to do is do your smoke testing. It's also known as a user test or an end-to-end test. So basically that the main functionality of the software hasn't broken. So I'll give a few examples of smoke testing. So say you've got a product website. So the main functionality or end-to-end user journey could be that they would log in, they would find a product, add this to basket, go to complete a transaction. This is like verifying their address and card payment details, complete the purchase and sign out again. That's your end-to-end user journey or your smoke test. As long as this main test is fine, then That's when you then go on to your sanity testing, then your regression testing. Other examples would include like a social media website. Again, you log in, you create a post, publish the post, and sign out again. That's probably the main user functionality of social media. So what time would you spend on smoke testing? You can do this manually or automate it. It's completely up to you. So for example, I'll bring my website up. My apologies, here we go. So this is our product called Site Diary. So what this does is people in rail construction can add shift details when they're out on site going along. So it says I'm doing it at the end of the shift. So a quick sort of end-to-end test for this functionality. If you're just going through a happy path, is anything from about 8 to 10 minutes, which is fine. However, what I'm going to do a quick demo of is automated smoke test. So my record at the moment is 17 seconds. So let's see how this goes. I think because I'm finished sharing, I'm not going to create that record. Oh, that's a shame. There we go. That was my smoke test done.
Chris, quick question, buddy.
Yeah.
What was that running?
That was running through Selenium IDE, which I shall show you on here. So there's all my code, or as like Selenium IDE is quite an easy one to do. We will discuss test automation at some point further this year. This is a simple point and click, so I can just easily go through the user journey, clicking as I go along. Selenium IDE will record it, and then you just do a simple playback, and it'll do it for you.
It's a free tool, that, isn't it? As well.
Indeed, it is. It was a Firefox extension at one point, but I think unfortunately they canned it off, and then Selenium IDE on Chrome kind of went, it will take it and make it an actual extension rather than a downloadable program or application as it used to be. So it actually uses up a lot less memory and RAM as well, which is really good.
It's a really useful tool for when you want to get into automation. It tells you the basics of what's on the page as well. So yeah, sorry, Chris.
All right.
That tool's really useful for people who are trying to get into automation. For me personally, it was where I first started from when I wanted to get into automation as well. So it's a really good tool to start picking up little bits of tips on how to write a bit of code as well. Sorry, I'll leave you alone now.
It's all right. I can box you. Okay, so as we saw there, an 8 to 10 minutes end-to-end user journey done in, that was 35 seconds. So before you even start thinking about doing your sanity testing or your regression testing, if that user journey for whatever reason fails, you're saving your time yourself already, and you can report the failing back to the developers and go, yeah, we need to fix this. Okay, and our next one is sanity testing. Sanity testing is a kind of software testing technique performed after receiving a software build, also after you've done your smoke test, with any minor changes in code or functionality to ascertain that the bugs have been fixed and no further issues are introduced due to these changes. The goal is determined that the proposed functionality works roughly as expected, well, as it should expected, not roughly. If the sanity test fails, the build is rejected to save the time and cost involved in more rigorous testing. That's when you would then come on to your regression testing. So an example of a sanity testing is basically, you might see this in tickets again, we'll come for this further down in QABC, is of a given when then. So again, I'll get up the web page. So given the user selects the button when the button actions, then that action will be complete. That is basically a very primitive version of a sanity test. So for example, say we change a bit of functionality on this button here and this area here. So your sanity test could be given an invalid email has been added, given an invalid password has been added. When you click on continue, you're not logged in, you get an error message. Next, given when then be given a valid email address has been added, given an invalid password, given a valid email address has been added, given an invalid password has been added. When you click on continue, you'll get an error message and won't be signed in. Then the last one could be given a valid email has been added, given a valid password has been added. When you click on continue, then you are successfully signed in. Given that you are clicked on forgotten password, you're then taken to the correct page to reset your password. That's your happy paths. You could also then include, there are different names, I like to call it negative paths. It's where given I've entered an invalid password, given I've entered an invalid email address, when I click on continue, I should not be signed in. But if you do get signed in, obviously something's clearly wrong. So the sanity is focused on main part of the software development. So once that's kind of passed, we would then move on to regression testing. So regression testing is defined as a type of software testing to confirm that the recent program or code change that had adversely affected existing features. Regression testing is nothing but a full or partial selection of the already executed test cases, again, your smoke and sanity, which are re-executed to ensure existing functionality is working fine. This testing is done to make sure that the new code changes should not have side effects on existing functionalities. Ensure that the old code still works once the latest code changes are done. So, for example, I'll bring this back up. So again, say this button is used on other sites of the website. We'll say, for example, this is a click icon to take you to another page. On any other parts of the website, is it affected? Is the styling affected? Is the functionality affected? When you click on it, does it not action on other parts of the page where this button already exists? That would be your regression to make sure if it has been reused on other parts of the website, that they have not been affected. So if, say, for example, you're just changing the color of this button, but the rest of the buttons are related to this button remain the same. So you would then check on other pages to make sure they are not affected. And again, you can still do like a bit of a user journey just to make sure wherever this may live has not been affected either. So those are kind of the breakdowns of what smoke, sanity, and regression testing are. So I'm now going to hand over to my good friend, Mr. Fulton, who's got an amazing presentation on Explorative Testing. So I'm going to hand over, yeah, it's all right. I'm going to hand over the screen sharing to you.
No, Chris, you might as well just keep it. I'll do this with you. All right. So explorative testing, for me, explorative testing is one of the best tools or techniques that any tester can use. From a person that's just starting out as a junior to a fully experienced manual tester, even an automation tester as well. This is one of the best tools that you use. For explorative testing, we don't use scripted test cases. So what we don't do is, if you go back so many years, so let's go back to how waterfall worked years ago, you would probably have a test manager who would write out a scripted test plan for you to go through the test. We don't do that in explorative testing. What we tend to do is we do quite a few things. One of the best things that we do is use it as a test charter, what we call a test charter, which is an ad hoc plan, basically. With the test charter, we tend to write it and time box it to the areas that we're looking at, and to a certain period of time, and we just focus on the areas that we want to do to try and pull out certain positive and negative test scenarios or things that people wouldn't do on a website or might do on a website to try and find defects within the code. Next slide, please. See, it's fun. All right, so what is a test charter? So as I said before, a test charter is coming up with an ad hoc plan to put out the areas that you're going to be testing, what you expect to find, what you're going to test, and a couple of the other slides will go through this as well. Time box it to a certain period of time as well. When I say a certain period of time, this means fully uninterrupted piece of time. So you don't want to get disturbed during that time, but I'll talk about that in a minute as well. Chris, do you want to go into the next one? So this is just a very basic one that I've just thrown together of what a test charter is. There's no massive documents that you can do. This is how you want to build it out yourself. For brand new, for anyone that starts in my company that's brand new, if you didn't realize or have not spoken about this before, I work for an agency, and our agency brings in companies and we build out software for them. These clients can go from 3 months to a year, 2 years maybe. I think we've had some that are about 7 years long. So we're constantly changing our clients over a certain period of time, and you've got to be really quick at being able to do that. So I always say to my QA team, my test team, or anyone that new that joins, best piece of advice I can give you is do exploratory testing around the new product. What this does is it gives you more of an insight into how an application should and shouldn't work. So when you are starting to build new features out or build on top of certain things, you can actually pinpoint things that won't work. Or you might say, well, you're sending off emails to clients, but what are them emails going to look like? It's not just clients it goes to, it goes internally as well. Have you thought about 2 different types of email system there? And it's things like that. Best tool you can have as a foundation starter, and even as an expert right now, is exploratory testing. It's really important. What I've got on the screen right now in front of you is a basic test charter. You can do this anyway. You can write it on a notepad. You can write it in Excel. You can do whatever you want with it, as long as you're mentioning what you're doing during that time. So I'm going to use an example as we go along. So just bear with me, it'll make sense as we go through. This is the first part that I talk about. Me, as a tester, I am going to do a charter, and my charter is going to talk about the functionality of a search box, and I'm going to report on areas of potential risk as well. The area section, we talk about what we're actually testing on. So we want to talk about, all right, well, I'm going to test on my Windows machine, and it's going to be Windows 10. You might want to break it down even further, where you say, I'm going to only focus on a certain browser this time. We all know how awful IE is. Years ago when I first started testing, IE6 was still in use, because if you didn't know, our government use really old tools. You don't want to change things because of security risks, so you don't update things so often. So when I was working at this company, IE6 was an extremely important browser to use. So you could put in there, I'm going to test Windows 10 and I'm going to test Windows IE6. It doesn't exist anymore, but that's just an example of what you can do. Then you point out what you're going to be looking at. So for my charter, I'm going to look at doing the search box, functionality of the search box, and I'm going to, report back on all these risks. However, this search box is on the home page only, and I'm just going to focus on the home page of the search box there. That's it. Anything else? No, not at all. I'm not going to look at anything else. I'm just going to focus on that. I'm going to say what time I'm going to be starting. So I started on the 19th of February, 2020. That's still a little bit out. It was 2013 yesterday, Chris. I've got better at it, but yeah, we've got 2020 in there. And me, I'm the tester. This is what I've done. Do you want to roll over, Chris? All right, so I'll move on to the next sections in a minute. So the next section is going to be talking about time boxing. So the way we do charters, we need to time box it to a certain period of time. We usually do that between 60 to 90 minutes. It's dependent on what you want to do. If it's got a big, massive piece of functionality, you might want to do it for longer. But you just got to sit there, uninterrupted work for 60 minutes to 90 minutes and test around that. You can reduce it or you can expand it if it's necessary. If you've sat there for 40 minutes and you've gone, actually, this functionality that I was looking at is really small, I don't need to expand it anymore. So when I talk about uninterrupted piece of work, does anyone understand the word Pomodoro? I'll explain that in the next slide as well. But Pomodoro is, it was a term used during transformations where it was like they wanted uninterrupted piece of work, so they used a time frame called Pomodoro. Chris, do you want to roll over? Or next slide, please. So Pomodoro comes from the term, it's Spanish for tomato, and it came from a timer. Now this timer, first person that started doing this was a Spanish person. I think he was a Spanish person, and he was using a timer that was a tomato. So they called this Pomodoro. What this means is that you get uninterrupted piece of work until this time is completed. So that means you need to turn off your phones, make sure you're not in your emails, and you need to shut down Slack or whatever messaging system that you're using at the time. No communication at all. For me personally, when I'm in this type of work mode, I tend to just be a bit blunt with people. On the slide it says, you can be a bit of an arse to people. Don't be a bit of an arse for the people. I'm just really blunt and straightforward with people when I'm trying to do something. But just be, let them know, make them aware that you're actually there, and you're really busy doing something else that's going to help them in the future as well. Next slide, please. So what we do then, we put down a duration of, let's say, 60 minutes. So we're going to do 60 minutes of this. It's going to be completely uninterrupted, no emails, no Slack, no interruption from people, no one coming over to annoy you. Just shut everything down. Just make sure you just focus on your operating system, your browser, and what you're going to be looking at. So test notes is what you're going to be doing within there. So for this, I'm going to focus on a destination search with positive and negative scenarios. This comes from a search system that I used a few years back. So this is really old, but you can see that as we go through. So with this, I'm going to have a view of the homepage, and on the homepage is going to sit the search box. In the search box, we've got destination, date of arrival, number of nights, occupancy, adults and children. From each one of these, from destination onwards, are different types of scenarios you can do. And you've got to make sure that you're hitting every single one of these as you go along. So you put down what you're going to be looking at as well. You might want to even go more in depth with this by breaking it out a little bit more, by saying, like, I'm going to build out some little test cases around this, saying destination, I'm going to focus on something on the other side of the world that doesn't get many people wanting to go there. And I'm going to book it for like 14 nights, 2 weeks. Let's see whether something comes back, nothing comes back. Why does nothing come back? You break it down that much of what's incoming and outcoming. Chris, next slide, please. All right, so this is what we're testing. So it's basically, we're going to do a search for a hotel. Session uninterrupted, we're going to focus on this. There's a mixture of these will give us different outcomes. Sorry, Chris, your message has just gone over what I was reading then. Sorry. It's all right. Messages pop up right in the middle and I can't see. So what we're going to look at, we're going to look at a different mixture of these, as I just said. So for this one, multiple destination searches. As you can see from the search box, you're looking at hotel name, you're looking at an attraction that's close by, and you're looking at a postcode as well. So there are 3 scenarios straight away you want to look at. The next one is the arrival date. This right now has already shown us that there's 2. There's a drop-down box with dates on there. There's also a calendar. So click a calendar, pops up, you pick a date. You select from a drop-down, you pick a date. So there's 2 there as well. The next one, number of nights. I think at this point the company was 14 nights, so it was two weeks. So you can go up to 14 on that one. I'll tell you why you'd probably want to test that a little bit as well, because there's a little couple of nuances in there as well when you started getting to certain sizes. And then you've got number of rooms, number of people per room. So you've got adults who can come along, and then you've got children as well. This is really important, especially for this company, because if you've got adults, there's only adults-only hotels, or there's family-friendly ones. So they'll bring back different search results. So right now, I think the adults went up to 4, and the children, no, went up to 6, and the children went up to 7. I don't know who'd want to stay in a room with 7 adults and 7 children. Not me. That's just hell for me. But you've got multiple different variations of tests that you can explore around to see what's going to bring back the correct results. Chris, next slide, please. So, as an example, if you were to search for one night for a standard destination, it would come back with this lovely view of, show you the price, it will show you the date you've selected, and then it will show you the next couple of dates, just in case you say, in fact, I might stay 2 nights because it's quite cheap. But it also shows you that if you want to do that, the next night might be full, as is on the 21st, 2013, but that was 8 years ago, so not a problem now. Chris, next slide. Then you've also got to think about, what if you entered a destination or an attraction or a postcode that doesn't exist? Gibberish, put gibberish in there, see what comes out. You never know, it might bring back something random. It might break the page, it might blow the page up itself, or it might have a nice friendly message just saying, we haven't got a clue what you're looking for, try it again. This result would also happen if you done a random search that didn't have any results coming back, like a 7 adult room with 7 children for 14 nights. Not many hotels will take that booking because it's just an extreme edge case. So we focus on, if we do that, is it going to bring anything back? If a hotel's like that, then it does raise a lot of questions. We've really got to think about that as well. Next slide, Chris. As I was saying before, the way this system worked, I worked on this for quite a few years, so I was used to this, that if you put any more nights in over 5 nights, I think it was, so when you went to 6 nights or more, it changed the view entirely. It would look completely different to what you thought it would do. So you need to test to make sure the correct view is coming through and not showing the view on the other page where it's got like all the dates in lines and it's really huge. Or it could just blow up. It might not work. So these are the types of things you need to think about when you're testing certain things or when you're doing explorative testing. But there's literally so many different types of ways of testing, scenarios you can test as you go through. So you just got to be mindful as what you're looking at when you start working on this. Next slide, Chris. So one of the things you want to put down is the risks. What risks do you see when you're starting to test? As this, what we've got right now is that some functionality may not work. I mean, that's just a given. It might not work. Someone might have deployed something, and just broke everything. So that's a normal one that you put in there. Another thing that I forgot to mention was there was 2 types of search. There was a free text search and there was an autocomplete search as well. So you could type in Manchester and select from a drop down that will say select Manchester, and it'll just drop that in there. Or you could type Manchester all the way through and search that. Still bring back the same results, but it's 2 bits of functionality you've got to be aware of. The other part as well is that if you're looking at a hotel itself by itself, you could type in a hotel, let's say, I can't even think of a hotel right now. Britannia in Manchester, and that's bad, that, Chris. Britannia in Manchester City Centre. If you select that from the autocomplete, the way the system worked was that it was meant to go straight to the details page of that particular hotel. It doesn't go through search, it goes to a different page completely for you to make a booking. That said, if you were to free text type that Britannia Hotel Manchester in the box, it should bring back the hotel search list with Manchester and all the other ones based around that got the word Britannia in there as well. So it'll bring back things like that. So there's still quite a lot that you really need to understand when you're trying to do explorative testing. Next slide, Chris. As you're going through this, you'll probably find a lot of books. Hopefully you won't find any books, but explorative testing is the way that you can actually pull out some of them books that people have not seen before. And it's better than doing something like sorry, David, it just blocked what I'm thinking of then. It's fine. yeah, you might want to put the bug list down there of when you're going through. People might have deployed something, it might not be working correctly, and you just want to note it down and just say, I found a bug where the autocomplete's not activating. It's a normal thing. Autocomplete can break. I mean, a good example of this is a postcode lookup. You can integrate a system to a postcode lookup block. So as soon as you start typing in, say, your postcode, or now it's got, like, you know, you can start typing in the first line of your address, and it'll bring back a list of the addresses in the country, and you can select one from that. You've got stuff like that. One example of that breaking is that I worked for a client once where we're currently at, and one of the developers had done a little bit of refactoring but never told anyone. And because he'd done that bit of refactoring, the postcode lookup box has broken. And people at that point, because people are very finicky when they start using websites, and if it doesn't work the way they want it to, there will be dropout and they will leave. So we had a lot of people just leaving and dropping out at that point of trying to purchase something. So it was just like, we need to get this fixed straight away. But because I wasn't told, you know, Explorative Testing could have picked that up as well, based around that. But it's just things like that you just need to be aware of as you go along. As an example, bug 2, you know, selecting over 5 nights, not bringing back the enhance for you when a search is made. As I said before, you've got 2 searches. You've got a basic one, which is just, you know, every day, and then you've got the more advanced one where it's a lot prettier, a lot nicer, but it displays up to 2 weeks on it, you know, for each hotel section instead of just one single line across the system. On that as well, you might also start talking about what issues you have, what issues you might crop up with as well. So you're going to sit there and just say, is the free text supposed to bring back hotels, and search at the top of the locations if they match? Or you assume that the search criteria is populated in the search form box. It's these type of things as you're going along, you'll start noticing these and just say, well, is it supposed to do this or is it supposed to do that? It's how you work the system. It's how you want to write the issues down as you notice them coming along. Is it an issue? Is it a bug? We might cover that again at a different time, but, you know, bugs is something that's breaking. Issues is something that you've noticed, something that's not working correctly. Chris, next slide. Get off your phone. All right, so at the very end of it, what we tend to do is we've completed our charter. You know, we've gone through all of those sections. We've tested that entire system. Thanks, Chris. We've tested that entire system for 60 minutes to 90 minutes. No one's annoyed us, which is great. We've ignored everything else. Now we need time to just review everything, the outcome of it. Chris, next slide, please. So one way of doing this is that you can use an agenda called proof. This is talking about past results, obstacles, outlooks, feelings. Past is looking at what happened during the session. So, you know, what did I do? What came out of it? So you're looking at all your bugs that have come out, your issues that have come out. Also, you want to look at the results. So these link in together. What you've done during it, what results came out of that. What got in the way of the testing for your obstacles? You know, did you get interrupted, or did the system go down, or was you using a out-of-date browser for the system that you're building? Example is IE6. Are you using that on something in 2021? You know, it shouldn't work. You know, but why are you testing that in the first place? What obstacles did you have that got in the way of you trying to do this? You also want to talk about what still needs to be done. This might not be important if you've completed everything you want to do, but from this you might start thinking about, you know, all right, well, I've tested all these different types of scenarios. I've found multitude of bugs, multitude of issues, positive, negative scenarios I've gone through, but there might still be quite a lot that you still want to do. So you might want to say, well, you know, at the end of it, I'm going to do another chapter tomorrow to focus on Safari, or maybe Chrome on MacBooks as well. Because that's the thing, you know, people use Chrome on MacBooks. You know, that might be one thing that you want to test. And then at the end of it, you want to, how do you actually feel about it? You know, was it a good charter? You know, did it point out more defects that you thought the system had? It's stuff like this that you want to get out at the end of it and just say, you know, like, all right, well, what's happened at the end of this? Am I happy with it, or am I not happy with it? Or is my system that my team have been developing, is it pretty shit? Do we want to try and fix this and make it better? And because of this exploratory testing charter, you've got a list of defects and things that can help improve the system as you go along. Next slide, Chris, please. So during the review as well, you will sit with your team, you'll assess the defects, what's come out of that. You'll review the areas covered. So in your team, it might just be like, oh, well, that's like this because of X, Y, and Z. But it's like, all right, well, I didn't focus on X, Y, and Z. I focused on A, B, and C. This is what I looked at. What you've learned from it. This is a really good question, really. It's like from any level, from a foundation basic, coming into the company, junior level, up until like the senior, even test lead level, you know, what have you learned? You learn quite a lot if you do something like this, you know, no matter what level you're at. Personally, I've done this in the past, and I've actually learned how systems work. And it's like, I did not realize the system works that way. You could see it as a defect, but it's like, actually, it's not a defect. It works that way. So these are really good. You learn things as you go along. And as I said before, you know, at the very end, you could just say, you know, do we need to do additional testing for this to be completed? So yeah, it's for explorative testing, it's one of the best tools you can use as a starter all the way through your career. So yeah, Chris, I think that's me. Do you want to go next slide? I don't know whether I put anything at the end. No. Yay. Any questions on that? And also, if I've talked too fast, let me know, because I do talk really fast.
It's all right, Ken. On YouTube, I'll bleep out the swear words. Don't worry.
It wasn't that many this time.
You have a lot better. Oh, you only dropped one of each swear word, so fair plays to you.
I can get worse. No, I'm not going to go.
No, cheers for that. That was amazing.
Yes, cheers, Ken. So I think we did have a question, didn't we, from David, but Chris has kind of dipped in and answered that. I don't know whether you would agree with Chris's answer, or if there's anything you want to expand on at all, Chris.
Just bear with me 1 second. He was trying to provide information on separate. Yeah, I think with Chris's answer, it really sums it up.
Yeah.
So personally, I could just be given a URL for a website and just saying, you know, we're building this, or we're fixing this, or we're making this. And personally, I would rather spend a day, 2 days, just, you know, looking into it, finding out what the little niches, nuances are of the website, and just seeing what we can do to improve that as going along. My role is not to test to make sure things work. It's also to make sure that we give the best quality by offering advice and improvements as we go along. And, you know, it's worked quite well over the past, like, 13, 15 years that I've been doing this. So, yeah, you know, hopefully they would give us a bit of a handover, but it's usually the opposite way around for me, where I have to hand over the new product to them. Update. But yeah, Chris hit the nail on the head.
Perfect.
Oh, thanks,
High praise. Fabulous. Well, what we'll do is we'll move into break time. We've got 15 minutes on the slide, but I don't know what people think. I think, you know, when you're on a video call, people tend to kind of nip off as and when they need to. So should we go 5, 10? What do you think? Yeah,
I think 10 minutes, come back at about 5 to, I think it's fair.
Yeah, perfect. That is great. Fabulous.
If people want to drop any comments or any questions during the break, I'm more than happy to type away and just file them off to them.
Yeah, brilliant. And then obviously we'll jump back after the break and we will hear Matt do his kind of career history overview. So we will dip back in the next 10 minutes.
Cool. Catch you in a few minutes.
Yep. How y'all doing anyway? Oops, sorry.
Doing good. Cheers, Andy, before I nip off.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I'm going to use a toilet break right now. But yeah, good to see you again, Andy.
You too, my friend. You too. How you been?
You know, so I've been good. I've been good, nice and busy. Really nice and busy. But it's nice that I've you know, Chris asked me to come along and have a chat about this. But it's something that's really good for us. You know,
yeah, definitely.
Explorative testing. It's really an amazing thing. It's really good, powerful tool.
I'm actually an advocate of exploratory testing as well, and I think for myself as well, with everything in life as well, you just explore everything, don't you? Like testing, there's no sort of set path for anything. like that, and everyone's different, really, aren't they? Every sort of test is different, but exploratory testing, I'm a huge advocate of that as well. And in my talks, I'll also sort of mention how important it is to perform exploratory testing as well.
Yeah, you're completely right. It really is. You even just saying that, then it's just like, you use it in the real world.
Yeah.
Personally speaking, if I go and buy something, I don't just look at something and say, oh, I'll buy that. I'll look into it, I'll research it, I'll think about it a little bit more. You're exploring everything about that. So you're using your data.
Definitely. It's like, even if you're going for a walk, you don't just stick to a certain path. Say, if you're going for a walk in the Lake District or the Yorkshire Dales, you do explore the area, don't you, until see what's there, don't you?
That's it. You might find a little hidden gem of a village somewhere.
Yeah.
That you wouldn't see before. It's great to do that. So good thing about testers and what we do is that we are very inquisitive and we want to know how things work. If you meet a tester that's not like that, it's quite worrying. But if you've got a mind that is just like very inquisitive and you want to look into things and research things, and that's what you want, and that's how when I hire people, I want that as probably the forefront of everything else. You've got really good experience, but can you really explore things? Are you inquisitive?
I think the thing I like about exploratory testing particularly is where it requires only domain knowledge. It doesn't really require system knowledge. You don't really need to know. You just need to know, what is it I'm trying to achieve? Is it a booking for a hotel? Is it a product that I'm buying, or what is it? And then you set someone off on it. So it doesn't require like some massive amount of qualifications, like perhaps oh, my camera's just gone very blue. Like automation testing, which is a completely different bag altogether and requires a lot of heavy work. The exploratory testing can just do it to anybody, really.
I think with you, Matt, you do quite a lot with automation testing as well. So you're automation testing, but the way automation testing is, it's very structured. You need to know your path in it. You can automate something to actually do random input, but you still need to know your paths. Where it's like with automation, it's like more of a manual thing as well. And if you look about Andy, I don't know whether do you know the difference between mobile testing and mobile testing and browser testing? One of the main factors for it.
Just trying to think. I mean, I've done a bit of mobile testing, not as much, but with that as well, my understanding. I'm just trying to think. I think with browsers, you're testing sort of how a page would look on specific browsers like i11 or Google and stuff. But mobile, it's sort of different to how it's stored. But
you're completely right with that. One of the main things about it as well is that what we're looking at right now is a system where you've got to touch it, you've got to see how it feels and looks, and does it swipe correctly and all that. So there's a massive difference between especially with automation. Automation can show you that the functionality works as it should work, but manual testing will show you that whether it looks or works as it should do. So there's massive differences between it.
Yeah, we refer to device testing internally as compatibility testing. So you're checking its compatibility against the device rather than checking that the site actually works. So you've already proven your functionality beforehand, and then you go into your devices and you're proving that it works on that particular device with that viewport, which is the screen size and those kind of things. So we've got in our we have a pipeline of work that runs through, and exploratory testing's at the end of that. We have people do that, but device testing is just before that, where we check the compatibility with all the devices, and then before that you have your cross browser with the desktop to make sure that it just functionally works. And then we go for API before that as well. But I won't go too far down that route.
That's a talk for another time, though.
Yeah. Well, it was funny because Chris was saying about automation testing, CI/CD, any of those sort of things. That's all I do. So it's kind of like, that's another talk. That's another talk. That's another talk.
That's to bring you back. It'll be good.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. Well, reserve judgment. In about 10 minutes, you'll know whether it's any good, and then you may want me back, you may not.
Sorry, quick one, Dean. Dean, if you're on there. All right. So, well, to be honest, I mean, if my QAs, or because I'm a line manager, I actually manage my entire test discipline. If I see one of my senior testers not taking on exploratory testing, why are they there? It should be embedded in every single tester, the fact that, this is useful no matter what level you're at. You're not that much of an expert where you can just sit down and just say, well, it works like this. It's like, it might not work like that. It might break if you put certain information in. What happens if you throw in SQL script into a search box? What does that do? Does it blow the page up? They should have a massive input into making sure they do exploratory testing. I would not just give it to junior testers. It's a great tool for junior testers going into a new company to say, for the next couple of days, I'm going to be testing this, understanding it, learning from it. But the senior members should still be doing that as well. What is one of the I think one of the ISTQB's test things, I can't even remember. I've not seen this for a while. One of it says that you cannot have 100% tests coverage. It's not going to be 100% accurate. It's not going to be 100% working. See, this is how much I've read that. I'm not a big fan of the ISTQB, but it's really important to
really.
I say this to everyone I meet, but it's a useful tool to have, but they need to make sure that whether you're foundation, professional, senior, lead, manager, especially managers as well, how can you preach if you don't know how to do it? And you want your seniors to mentor other people. You don't want them going off by themselves. So it's really important that we make sure that the seniors are doing this still.
The other thing I find is that your senior QAs or your senior testers, they like doing this because this is just fun. You go in the room, at Boots we have a whole room full of EPOS tills and self-checkouts and all those sort of things we use in our stores. And our guys love to go in there and just literally run riot on it. How fast can you stick a card in and pull it back out again and break and blow the whole thing up? They absolutely love doing that. If you give them a script, they'll follow the script, but they don't really like doing it because they've run those scripts 100 times before.
Yeah.
Whereas if you give them go in there and really break this, I want to see it, really busted. They take that as a massive challenge. They'll go in there. You have to hold them back. They want to go in there with hammers and stuff, and it's just it's worth a lot of money. You can't go and smash it.
Get that point.
Although self-checkout, we would probably like to smash, but that's.
I've just
got that video as well. That's like, oh no.
I've just got an internal monologue of if you just smash the self-checkout, the voice speaking back to you, please stop. Don't put that in.
Yeah.
So, Dean, I hope that answered your question. But I don't know whether you've done a toilet or not, so I might have just talked for no reason then.
No, great. Cheers, Ken. Thank you.
No, that's fine. That's fine. If you get anyone gets any questions for me and Chris, just fire them in this, and we'll pick them up as we go along. I'm going to nip off to the toilet that quick.
Yeah, we've got 2 minutes left of the break. So.
I've already got that.
Being timed, buddy. You've been timed.
Yeah, we'll give it another minute, let everyone have a chance to get back, and then we will start with the second half, and hopefully we'll be on track to kind of finish up as normal, kind of at around past. I think, Chris, you've popped something in the chat already, haven't you, about feedback and if anyone's got any comments, so definitely do that if you get a chance.
Yeah, so I'll post again if anybody's who's joined since I posted that. Yeah, as always with QABC, we always sort of get better and build on what the feedback is from everyone. So if there's something you like to hear about or see next, or there's something you liked, or there's something you didn't like about this session, we don't know unless you tell us. And over the past 18 months now, we've done quite a few of these. it's started to pay off. You know, our structure has become a bit better. We've got more guest speakers coming in. That was one of the major feedbacks. Yeah, so please follow that link, and yeah, just put your thoughts and feelings down. There is a little morale on there as well. So yeah, you've had a bit of a rubbish day, put it in. You had a great day, put it in. Yeah, like I said, the whole point of QABC is for you guys. That's what we're here for.
Exactly. It's all community led, isn't it? And it's all about, you know, there's no point us chatting on for, you know, an hour and a half each event if it's just not helping anyone, it's not relevant. So yeah, definitely feedback is key. Fabulous. Well, we are 5 to now. I think probably the bulk of people will be back. So what we will do is we will get on to the second half. I don't know whether, Chris, you need to hand over screen control to Matt. Matt, have you got slides?
Yeah, I've got my own setup going, so that's okay.
Yeah, perfect. So you're just going to talk to the screen. Brilliant.
I will talk to the screen. I am used to talking to whoever will listen. So,
well, what I'll do is just obviously, just in case anyone doesn't know too much about yourself or your background. So Matt is someone we've obviously invited to do our second half, which is normally a bit of kind of a career run through and how he got into testing. So as it says on the slide there, and I won't kind of ruin the premise of his talk, but over 20 years testing experience, and he is currently at Boots as lead estet. Is that right?
yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yep, that's right. I'll explain what all this is all about in a minute. You might just need to give me screen sharing privileges on the host. You might need to make me host on that.
Yes. Let me see.
At the moment, it's just saying that the host is disabled screen sharing.
You should be able to do it now. I think I've done it.
Awesome. That sounds good. Right. So let's have a look. Let's see whether. So can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Brilliant. It looks like my camera's going to go a bit wonky in this whole thing, so it's probably because the light is gradually fading. So I'll just keep talking and hopefully just ignore anything that else is going on. And whether my face looks really weird, it normally does, so it's absolutely fine. Yeah, as Gabby mentioned, I am a lead software development engineer in test. Basically, it's a very nice title that comes from people like Microsoft. It essentially means that I test software via automation for a living. And yes, I do work for Boots UK, so I look after all the automation testing across all platforms and all projects within the Boots head office, based here in Nottingham. So that rather nicely takes me to probably my first slide, if it switches over. Yep. So unfortunately, because I work for a rather large corporate organization, I just have to state that all these views and opinions are of my own making. I'm the author of this presentation, so they obviously don't represent the views of Walgreens Boots Alliance or an American company or Boots UK. Now that we've got that out of the way, we can carry on. But apologies for that. It's just unfortunately one of those PR things we have to do. So history is going to change. You'll forgive me for this presentation. It mainly features a lot of quotes from Back to the Future, which tends to be my favorite film. I really like it purely because the character of Marty McFly really kind of resonates with me a bit. He's a bit of a loser, and history is going to change for him. Which actually, I was only watching it the other day. It's quite interesting because actually he predicts the outcome of the film. He says at the beginning to Mr. Strickland that history is going to change, and that's certainly one of the things that has been true in my life as I've gone along. Obviously, I'm not an expert. I'm not a professional counsellor. I've had a rather successful career in testing, and actually, in a community like this, I want you to have one too. So hopefully, you'll see some key messages from my presentation. Those are really about anyone can be a tester. If I did it, so can you. It's not something that you choose as a career necessarily. I've found in my experience, it sort of chooses you. And then a really key message that I really want you guys to really appreciate is you need to invest in yourself. You need to put time in to train yourself and to make sure that your skills are up to date, and you're working with, you know, the latest ideas that are out there in the industry. And my shameless little plug from Back to the Future again is, if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything, which is the real testament of the line of the film, really. As long as you put your mind to it, you can majority of time do anything you like. So let's move on to my next sort of thing. So a little bit about me, really. I lived in Australia until I was 11. Not that you would be able to tell, I've lived here way too long. I was born in Australia. I grew up there, and then when I was 11, my parents moved back here to the UK because they're both British. And as a result, I've been here for the last 34 years or so. As a result, I am a dual national, so I am Australian and I have the UK, which has got a brilliant, really side benefit in that in sporting events, regardless of whether England lose or win in the cricket, as long as it's to Australia, I'm good and I'm set. So I don't generally have any issues with sporting events and the Olympics and things like that. So that's really quite good, because Australia is pretty decent at those sorts of things. Then I have a wife and 2 children. My children are a lot older. So my son is 20, my daughter is 17. We're a multinational family. So we have lived in 3 different countries collectively between us. So my children have 3 nationalities. They're Australian, they are British from my wife, and they have American because they were born over there. But we'll cover that a little bit more in the future as we go through where I ended up and why I ended up in the States. Outside of work, I'm a bit of a nerd, really. I like Lego. I like anything like that. I got back into it when I just stopped being afraid of being nerdy anymore, and I just carried on thinking, you know what, I don't care anymore. And so I have a huge, quite decent Lego collection, really, of mainly the adult stuff, you know, the sort of main bigger, more intricate design of things. It's all in storage at the moment because I'm waiting to do my own home office. So at some point it will all move in there and it will all be, you know, nicely displayed and everything like that. You may get the chance to see that in the future. I'm a bit of a gamer. I am absolutely rubbish. My son plays a lot of games. He's on a college course for gaming himself, and unfortunately I play with him and he has to bail me out all the time. So I love playing games. I'm enthusiastic about playing games, but I'm just not that good at it. So that's just sort of me and who I am and where I've come from in terms of just sheer country that I was born in. The picture behind here, by the way, is Perth. That's my hometown, Western Australia. So if you think of Perth, you can think of me. It's a small town. Well, it's a city, but it's relatively small. It's only roughly 20 million people live in the whole of the country of Australia. So you can get an idea that Perth itself is pretty small. Right, so how did I become a tester? Is what you all really want to know. I didn't set out to be a tester, is the short answer. I found that education wasn't the thing for me. And at 16, I was determined that I was never going back to education. I was never going back to school. I absolutely hated it. I don't learn in the way that they do things by exam and by rote. I don't learn that way, and so I found it very challenging when I was 16, and to even think about going and doing A levels was just out of my mind altogether. So in '91, I decided that I would go for a youth training scheme. And for those of you that are too young to know, this was a government scheme whereby they were putting 16-year-olds into work, and I started a job as an office assistant. I was paid really measly. I was paid less than £1 an hour for a 37-hour week. So I used to earn £29.50 a week, which rose to about £70 a week. And after 2 years, the company collapsed into receivership, and that was it. I was out of work. It was a company that sold furniture and bedding and things like that. And with the sort of recession that was going on at that time, new builds, new stuff were not happening. And so as a result, the company went bust. So I was in the working world. And to be honest with you, as it went, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. I kind of didn't really have any long-term jobs. I just kind of flitted around from job to job every couple of years, moving on, or even 6 months. I just kept moving on. So I worked for about 4 years on and off in different roles for the NHS. Realised that there wasn't a lot of money in the NHS in terms of, career path and things like that. So I decided to go into the commercial world. And in '96, I joined Experian in an area called Car Data Check, which is a little bit like HPI check for those of you that know how you do a check on a number plate of the car to make sure it's not stolen, or it's not insurance write-off, or it's not under finance. Experian set themselves up in competition to HPI. And it was then that I kind of became a data control coordinator, which was nothing more than getting a whole ton of tapes that came from various places like the insurance companies or the police or from finance companies, and putting them on a mainframe and loading them up. And it was mundane and it was very, very boring. But one of the things that happened was I started to talk with the developers that were working on some of the other functionality, and they kept giving me software to try out because I'd become a bit of a domain expert in how the system worked generally behind the scenes. So they kept giving me this stuff and I kept breaking it, and they kept giving it to me and I kept breaking it, and I would break it within a few minutes. And in fact, I would take it as a challenge to see how fast I could break it. So they give me a new build of the software, and this is all Windows client, thick client, application installs. And I kept breaking it, and I kept breaking it, and kept breaking it. And the development manager actually asked me and said, well, do you want to come and be a developer? So I thought, whoa, yeah, okay. That's the first time I've really thought about my career and about what I wanted to do. So I decided that, yeah, that's the route I was going to go down. Except the nemesis that is an aptitude exam sat in the way. And I did that aptitude exam 2 days before I was due to get married, and I failed spectacularly. I didn't just fail it slightly. Halfway through, I just knew that I was done. The trouble is that sometimes, and you may have experienced this yourself, but when you're young and you get a setback like that, you tend to give up, and you tend to think, oh well, maybe this wasn't the right path for me. Maybe I'm not clever enough. Maybe I shouldn't have done this. Maybe I tried too hard. Maybe I tried for the stars and fell back on, on my backside. And that sometimes can make you change your approach to things. And it was true in my case, because what then happened in '97 was I just decided that I was going to leave. I had a really good job actually, and it was local, it was in Nottingham, but I became a little bit, almost disorientated by my own failure. And so therefore I decided that I was going to leave, and I joined a different company. It was the biggest mistake I'd ever made in my career, and I don't mind admitting that. I joined as a system tester, and although it got me into the world of testing, as soon as I walked in the place, I realised what I'd done. They used to do quotation systems for home, life, car, all that kind of stuff, and they had some really big clients. And basically, my job was to test the releases before the CD, which was actually a physical CD that was burnt and sent out, before that was shipped to the client. And in that process, I didn't fit with the organization really. However, at that point, I started to pick up automation testing. And so they sent me on a course for QA run 16-bit when it was Windows 3.1.1, before Windows 95. And I did the course, really enjoyed it. But then I had a year that I had to wait until I could pay back the money of that course. So as soon as my year was done, I got out of there as fast as I could. It's also where I learnt my hatred for, and I don't mind saying this is hatred, my hatred for motivational posters. You know, have you ever seen those posters where they'll have a key phrase on it, and then there'll be some other words underneath that will be something like, you know, success, and then there'll be some. I vowed, and I have done this now a number of times. If I walk into a building for interview and I see those posters, I walk out again. I don't entertain it anymore, because I think that we don't need to be told to be motivated. We get motivation from our work and from our job. And I'm just realizing my camera's going absolutely nuts. So apologies for that in advance. So I left that company and oh, thank you. My wife just turned the light on for me very kindly. So I left that company and I joined a different kind of company to what I was used to, where they were working for the pharmaceutical industry, and they were doing essentially our role was to take the automated tests and to make sure that when the software that we sold was installed on site, it worked and it complied with the FDA regulations. So they call that computer systems validation. So kind of very niche part of system testing, more down the line of once you've actually got a build of software, you kind of take it and prove to your client that it actually works. And for that company, I used to do an awful lot of traveling. So I used to go to France, I used to go to Germany, I used to spend a lot of time in the US. Not so much in Canada, but we had a couple of clients there. I missed out on Japan, which was really gutting. But out of all of it, I used to travel the most to the US. And it was at that point that the office in the US asked me if I'd like to go and live there for a short time, for 2 years. And my wife and I, we jumped at it. We just decided that that's what we wanted to do. So from a testing point of view, I started at that system tester, which in a job that I really hated, but actually it took me to somewhere that was really quite good and interesting and exciting. The travel was awesome, brilliant. Although the locations tended to be their research and development facilities, so they're out in the middle of nowhere. So generally you would find that they were somewhere that they didn't really want people snooping about. So it was great being in and out of airports, but to be honest with you, the places you tend to see the hotel and then the site and then back again. But there was a real sense of achievement. I used to work really, really long hours, partly because I kind of was a little bit addicted to it, to the success that we could get from when you actually made it work, made all the automation work, made everything work on site, showed the client, left them with a whole ton of documentation, and then you walked away. And we as a small team were very, very profitable for the company that we worked for. So after moving to the US, we had a number of challenges that sort of came along. We moved in October of 2000, and we absolutely loved it. Within a month, we knew that we wanted to stay. We managed to get through a Department of Labour certification, because that generally is what happens when you move as an inter-company transfer. So I moved from the UK office to the US. They need to prove that an American couldn't do the job that I was doing. That all got through. And then the green card application went in, and then everything stopped, because unfortunately we were in the States when 9/11 happened, and we were only a short distance away from New York City where it occurred. At that point, all of our aspirations and hopes and everything, dreams of staying in the US started to fall apart as the time for visas and green cards started to take longer. And you weren't talking months, you were now talking years. Then about 2 months after that, we ended up with a little bundle of joy, which was when my son was born. So we had our son in November, and then not long after that, without really understanding the implications of what was going on around in the world, we bought a house and we were living life, and we really enjoyed ourselves. Except it came back to bite us a little bit, because our visa maxed out. And if you've ever had to do that sort of stuff, It's really difficult, really tough. Our daughter was born not so long beforehand. We had a house, the visa maxed out, and in 2005 we needed to move back. And we had a short window of time in order to get out of the country so that we weren't staying illegally. And in doing so, once I got back to the UK with 2 little children, traveling, and my testing life and the things that I was doing just stopped becoming fun anymore. It just wasn't fun. It wasn't fun going away for 2 weeks at a time, not seeing the family, then coming back for a couple of weeks and then going again. It just didn't become fun. And so after 6.5 years of working for them as a permanent arrangement, I joined a consultancy company, if I could say it, providing system testing services, and they would ship us out as basically almost contractors to whoever their clients were. So we had some long time clients down at Alliance and Leicester at the bank, and there was all these different sort of jobs that we could take. Now, you'll forgive me for these next 2 slides. I don't mean to sort of bring everybody down or to tell you a story, a feel sorry story. I just want to highlight that this sort of stuff is really what happens to people, and you will find it in your life, and you've probably experienced these sort of things. But what is really important is how we recover from these things and how we get back to being on an even playing field. And in my situation, it didn't end just in this movement of job into a more system testing job. Unfortunately, I had some really bad things that then happened. My wife's health started to deteriorate. It turned out that her kidneys were beginning to fail, and it was tough. We had young children. I was trying to work as a tester, and then lo and behold, we needed to drop to 1 income. So in 2007, I decided to go it alone. So I decided that I'd take a risk, take a punt, and go and be a tester as a contractor. So fortunately, because of the industry knowledge that I'd got around testing and testing for pharmaceutical companies, I got picked up straight away by AstraZeneca in Audley Edge, not far from Manchester. And I started working for them, and we were dealing with patent systems, which were to do with discovering new compounds and drug compounds, and the research that has to get submitted in order for you to get your market exclusivity before a drug it comes out. And I started out as sort of a bit of a green system tester because I hadn't really done anything much more than what was the sum of my experience. But as soon as I got back into the industry I was comfortable in, they soon wanted me to be the test manager, and then I started to look after much bigger and bigger projects, as you'll later see. So that contract kind of lasted for 2 years. I got an increase in pay. Things started to really pick up and do really well, and it didn't stop. So there wasn't another hardship. There wasn't another downturn to things. In fact, I was very fortunate. I kept in work for almost 9.5 years with very, very little interruption in any of that, mainly because it was relationships with people, and that's one of the things that I've always found in my career as a tester, is that relationships with people have always been key. If people understand you and you understand who you are, then you can often find that they will make allowances for perhaps little gaps in knowledge that you might have, or even help you along in your career progression. So relationships have always been a big thing for me in maintaining that and making sure that my relationships were always really strong with any client that I worked for. So I worked on a couple of projects for AstraZeneca. I then moved to Thomson Reuters, testing stock market systems with automation and proprietary tools like Quick Test Professional, which if you've been around a little while, you'll know that there's now this trend towards open source tools. But before that, there were a lot of vendors selling products that would do the the same as the or open source tool, but for an awful lot more money. And Quick Test Professional was one of those. Test Partner was another one, and I worked for Fujitsu for a while on DWP payroll system. We were testing again with automation, and Test Partner was our tool of choice. Then it was back again to AstraZeneca for another couple of years on the sister project for the one that I'd just done. That was a 17.5 million pound project for the biology side rather than the chemistry side of the business. And then I just kept moving along with contracts of varying sorts. I varied into digital agency, and I worked for a company in Macclesfield that wanted to take the 4 Citizens Advice contact management systems that sat behind the scenes, merged them all into one, and there was a big migration project, and then also some programming on top, so that and I was the singular tester, so they'd never had a tester before. I walked in and shaped the testing to how I wanted it to be. One of the really good things that I managed to get to do when I was working for them particularly was that we were contracted by AstraZeneca to produce an application, a mobile application for cancer patients. There was almost like a video diary, because cancer patients were coming into the clinicians and saying, yeah, I feel fine, but actually last week they were being sick. And this video diary system was a way of being able to capture their feelings on any given day. And that was probably one of the best things I ever managed to get to do in the whole career that I've had so far. It was fantastic to see the difference that could make to people. Then as legislation and governments and things like that changed, contracting stopped becoming, attractive. And one of the things that I found at that point was, because I'd been contracting for quite some time, I hadn't necessarily invested in myself. I hadn't taken the time to invest in courses, training, making sure that my skills were current. And then in 2016, I found that my role had finished as a contractor, and now I needed some permanent work. And the world around me had sort of moved on a little bit, because now we were talking about things like BDD, behavior-driven development. Now we were talking about TDD, test-driven development. Now we were talking about all these different cucumber, gherkin, all these different terms that were then meaning that I didn't really understand the world that I was trying to get into anymore. And I was very fortunate that Boots came along, and I was picked up into a permanent role, looking after all the testing for the entire EPOS system, the whole of the Boots estate. So 2,500 stores, 17,000 tills, all the self-checkouts, the payment systems, the mainframe backend, the stock and accounting stuff. And just in our testing alone, we were managing a portfolio over a couple of years of about £1 to £2 million, just testing the software itself. It was really good. I got a really quick crash course in how you test at an enterprise level and on a grand scale. And one of the things that I noticed particularly was that there was no automation testing at all in the work that we were doing. So we set on a POC, on a proof of concept, to see whether we could do so. It took a couple of years, but eventually we managed to get to a point where we could actually use automation on our tills, because they're not Windows based, they're not Linux, they're not anything. They're a proprietary language called IBM 4690, which is, and if you want the technical thing, I can tell you all about how we did that. But it was complicated, but we managed to get there. Self-checkout was a little bit easier because it got a remote desktop session. So again, we could take control. We could do things that you could normally do with automation. And we managed to do about 80% of the user journey on the self-checkout with that, using little Raspberry Pis that had a web server within them, and they would flash the barcodes at the self-checkout. So there was very little for anybody to kind of stand and do, or to manually intervene with. And it really worked. It really worked really well. And one of the things that I probably learned the most in that was to stay true to myself. The team was really disjointed when I joined. We didn't really talk to the people that were doing our work for us through a third party in India. We didn't know who they were. And over time we chipped away at it, where we rebuilt the team. So we had a whole weekly meeting every morning on a Monday to talk with the team. We refused to use the terminology of onshore and offshore. We called them Team Nottingham or Team Covi, Covi being an abbreviation of the location they're in. And over time, we actually managed to get them to a point where they would tell us a lot more than we were expecting, particularly when we were looking at things like exploratory testing. They'd tell us all sorts of stuff when that would, when they actually felt that there was a relationship with them. And to be honest with you, it was one of the hardest things I had to do to leave. I didn't leave the team, I didn't leave Boots. Well, I left the team in terms of my portfolio, and it was really difficult because they really enjoyed working for me, and I enjoyed working with them. So, and I'm conscious that I'm running over time. All of a sudden, it's really hard to condense my career in just a short thing. So eventually, I took on the role as the lead tester. Obviously, as you can see, my background's all in automation. And so in 2019, we had this position come up that was needed. And as a result, I applied, and I was able to look after the automation that's being done at Boots. As you have seen, there's things like given when then, behavior-driven development, Selenium WebDriver IO. We implemented device testing and cross-browser testing using virtual labs, a little bit like I think you had the other week, Browser Stack. Source Labs is a competitor to that. We started to implement all of these things within our automation and build up a real capability within the team to be able to handle anything that came its way. It has been and still is a fascinating journey as we're trying to take our third parties, because we have a lot of people that are contracted to us to do our work, to take them through this journey and to really kind of bring them up and to think about how we can do testing faster and faster and faster, particularly when you get to things like the nuances of API testing versus UI. I won't blow anybody's imagination with all that. I think those are all conversations for another day, and I think I'm being lined up for some of this in the future. But yeah, it was just brilliant to get involved in this. And I think the thing that I kind of took from this was similar to what I've put there as the heading for this slide. If you think back to the Future thing, at the end, Doc has got the letter that's been torn up. And he says, well, what about all that screwing around with future time events and the space-time continuous? And Doc Brown says, I figured, what the hell? And that's kind of how I've felt with this role, is just go with it, just try, don't say no to it, just carry it. There may be some scary bits in it where you don't know exactly what's going on, but there's an opportunity to learn, and there's lots and lots of things that you can then start to influence and change as your career goes along. If you're starting at a junior level or you're starting at a more senior level, it doesn't really matter. You just need to keep that momentum going and not saying no. You'll be pleased to know we're really nearly right at the end. So apologies that I'm using up all the time that you could possibly imagine, but I'm not going to stop. I'm just going to carry on. So essentially, I'm coming back to my sort of key messages that I wanted everybody to know from my talk tonight. I'm not an expert. I'm working it out as much as you are working it out. But we might not be able to change our past, but we certainly can change where we go to from here. You might think about, how Matthew influenced the name of the mall. So originally it was Twin Pine Mall, but because he ran over one of the trees, it became Lone Pine Mall. Well, we're not going to be able to ever be in a position to be able to do that kind of thing where we change our future. It just doesn't quite work like that. But what we can do is we can change some of the things that are now, and we can also do some things that will lead to a better future as we go along. The biggest thing is training. Don't ever don't ever think that training will be just something that you do in your office. You got to be constantly training yourself. If that means webinars, or it means groups like this, or it's podcasts, YouTube, there's free resources all over the place on every subject that you can know around testing of any sort, whether that's security testing, automation testing, anything you want. There's all free resources out there that you can get hold of. It's also worth knowing that qualifications aren't everything. I've always found that you don't have to be really academically clever with this. You can do it. You just have to apply yourself to it, and you can work at it, and it might not be the easiest of things, it might not come to you so fast, but you can do it. You just have to be confident in yourself, and that's difficult, particularly when things go wrong. And even on that's why I put my quote in of, even on the darkest days, there's always a blue sky above the clouds, something that I have to reflect on regularly. It's really difficult sometimes to see the light at the end of the tunnel. We all perhaps have self-belief problems, or lack of self-belief, confidence. There's all sorts of diagnoses for all sorts of things, and whether you have one or not doesn't really matter. What it means is we've got to try to find that blue sky and try to continue to move with confidence, even though sometimes it's a little bit scary. And relationships and networking is always going to help you. It's always going to be your backstop, that people are going to help you out, when you need them, particularly when things get a little bit dark. And that's certainly been true from my point of view. So I hope this has given you some things to think about. You can, there's lots and lots of things out there. There's tons of resources. There's people to follow on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on everything you can possibly imagine. And I think that probably the thing for me to finish on, really, more than anything, is one of the finest lines of any film, and it's a Back to the Future line, is that if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything.
Oh, fabulous. Thank you so much for that. You probably won't know this if you've not been on talks with Chris and us before, but we're very much into a quote and like a film quote, things like that. So it's very funny. You very much fit into kind of the style of the talks that we do here. But yeah, no, really, really strong message there. And I think every time we have someone talk through their career history, it's just a really good reminder that, there's so many different paths that you can go down, and not one person's career journey is going to be the same. So like you've said there, it's just about embracing it and saying yes to as much as possible, and you never know where you're going to end up. But yeah, no, that was really, really great. Thank you so much. Everyone's agreeing in the chat box.
Well, thank you very much for listening to me.
Brilliant. Have we got any questions that anyone wants to put to Matt? As ever, I'm sure, if things spring to mind after the event, we can always, field questions later.
Yeah, of course you can. Yeah, I mean, you've got my contact information and stuff, and that's fine. I don't think it'll be the first or the last you'll see of me. I have a feeling that I might be back again to talk about other things and to talk about automation, probably, because Chris has already lined me up for that. So I'm more than happy to, though. It's nice to be part of a startup community that's not as established as perhaps some of the Ministry of Test stuff or those sort of things. This is a little bit more homegrown, and it feels a little bit more like we're contributing to something.
Definitely. Well, we have had a question through. So the question is, getting into the industry seems hard, which I think, we can all agree with. Sometimes people don't want to give kind of the newbies a chance. And if we don't start somewhere, how are we going to get the experience? Really loves the role and hasn't stopped learning since he started, but really struggling with getting an entry-level role. So I suppose the question there would be, any advice from, potential hiring manager point of view, or any other tips that you can give to people trying to get that first job?
I guess the biggest thing is it is a challenge, and COVID and the pandemic and all that sort of stuff has probably not made it any easier. There are a lot of testers out in the market looking for next roles, and you will often be just one in a series of other people. And unfortunately, that is very much the case. I guess the biggest thing I would say is if you really want it, don't give up and don't stop. Just keep, somebody will open a door to you. A lot of it, in my experience, has been having a conversation with someone that I didn't think was going to go anywhere, and it just happened to be that way. A little bit like joining this. It was some other circumstances. I spoke to you, Gabby, obviously, and lo and behold, here I am. So I tend to find that networking and talking to people, if you try to, and Gabby, you have to shut your ears. If you try to go down the recruitment route, that's really hard. It's going to be, you're going to just keep getting knocked back. You need to kind of think about where you might find that person that you can interact with on a face-to-face basis, who gets to know you, and then something comes from that. I know that's a really non-specific answer, but I tend to have found in my experience that's been the way that most things get done. If you try through formal routes, you'll just keep getting the knockbacks, and that's hard. That's hard to do on your mental health as well.
Definitely, yeah, it's a tricky one, and I think, like you've said there, Matt, you don't underestimate the power of the network. And again, in COVID times, that's even harder to do, because it's not like we can turn up to events and speak to people. So you're doing the right thing by attending something like this. Keep putting yourself out there, and don't be afraid to take it to that next level and drop someone an inbox on LinkedIn, and tweet someone, whatever you can do. Don't ever be ashamed to try a different tactic, because that's how you're going to stand out.
And sometimes it's just about being cheeky. It's just about being direct and just saying, "Can I have a job?" Sometimes it shouldn't be like that. But sometimes it is. Sometimes it's just about, just standing on a roundabout with a sign saying, "Give me a job." Someone somewhere will admire the qualities that you're portraying in working hard to find that next role. And if you keep persisting at it, it will happen, because you'll make it happen by your sheer doggedness of it. And that's really where, if you want something like that, you just have to keep pushing at it till it happens.
Definitely.
Sorry, Gabby. I was just going to say, I mean, where I work in the past, what I've tended to do is have people come in to get experience and spend some days with us over a certain period of time, just to see how we work and get more experience for how we do that. We've got a couple of hires that way. Maybe just reaching out to companies and just saying, I don't have the experience, but can I learn from your company? I'm more than happy once all of this COVID nonsense is over with, and we can finally get back together and start, having these meetings. I'm more than happy to put it out there that people can come and, shadow me, shadow my teams, learn how we work, put it out there to companies and just ask, can I, do a bit of work experience with you for a couple of weeks, understand how they work, build that experience up, and then when you start sorry, go on.
I was just saying, track them down on LinkedIn. Just find someone that's got you tend to find like somewhere like Boots, it's a little bit difficult. It's always a challenge for us to do those sorts of things, only because we've got processes and policies until they come out of our ears. But like a smaller company, a little agency, little digital agency, yeah, absolutely, of course you can.
Yeah, to snap people up, they'll be like, they'll have people that's doing like, testing for them as well. They may not be fully experienced, but they're giving a look over their, software. They'll snap your arm off to do things like that. So what I'd suggest is, like, once this is over, anyone wants to contact me, once I've got time and, all this is, we're working out, I'm more than happy for people to come in for experience days. Hit up other companies as well, see whether they'll do that, because it's going to improve what you're learning as well to move forward.
Yeah, I was just thinking when I was working for so the company I used to work for in Macclesfield, were Sigma Consulting. They did like all the digital agency stuff in that area, and they did a lot of things like UI UX type things, accessibility. and they would pay people to, you know, kind of come in and do bits of that. That might even be a really good inroad. Just try and get yourself on, you know, some usability, accessibility kind of type stuff where you just sort of paid for your opinion, but you get to be hands-on with something.
Definitely. I always say the worst possible thing that can happen, and I say this to people in my team when I'm training new people, is they'll say no. The world's not going to end, you know, it's not all going to come tumbling down around you. They might say no, and it might be a bit awkward and uncomfortable, but that's the absolute worst that can happen. So yeah, definitely the message is persevere. Fabulous. Right, well, what we will do is, obviously, I think everyone's aware, but we do have a Slack channel. So in between each monthly event, that is where the conversation keeps going. So make sure that you're on there if you're not already. And if little questions do come up in between events, then that is the place to be. I know Chris sent out the feedback link. So are you wanting people to do that kind of in their own time, or are we reviewing that now? I'm just conscious we've probably run over quite a bit, so it might be better to review.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine. To fair, Matt, that was a great talk. So you are forgiven. It's fine. Just there's one I did want to mention on the CNX. So I want to put any way we can get the slides notes. I can't write that fast. I empathise, neither can I. However, we do have a YouTube channel, so all this is being recorded. When I've done my editing for Ken's bleeping, yeah, then that'll go up. I'll put that on the QABC meetup as well when that goes live on this event. And again, come and join our Slack channel, and the link will go on there as well, or go to YouTube and just search for QABC or QA Beginners Club. You'll recognise the logo, and then you can see all our past events as well.
Fabulous. Right, that is excellent. Well, I really hope that everyone enjoyed it. Obviously, enjoy the rest of the lovely evening, and me and Chris and Ken will all get our heads together and obviously get a great next event lined up for towards the end of April. So watch this space, and we will see you all soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Again, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks,
you, Matt, and thank you, Ken.
Pleasure.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for listening to me.
Thanks very much.
Cheers, everyone. Stay safe, everyone.
See ya.
Thank you.
Yeah, you
Bye.
too. Take care, man.
Thank you.
Take
You
care.
too, my friend. You too.
Do we keep smiling, waiting? Or maybe stop recording.